Folks, you're not going to believe this one, so I've included the only pictures of this event ever recorded. The place was the upstate New York village of Massena, which relies heavily on tourism by virtue of its proximity to Robert Moses State Park and other parks located along the St. Lawrence River between Canada and the United States. The time was late morning on July 6, 2009, a day which will live in infamy in the annals of absurd police behavior. My wife and I had ridden our Pooch moped from Robert Moses State Park grounds, where we were camping, to the nearby village of Massena to do some shopping. I was wearing a bicycle helmet, my wife was not. I then noticed a police car with its lights flashing behind us, so I pulled into a parking lot to get off the busy street. The female officer in the squad car told us that the passenger, my wife, was not wearing a helmet and not to move from the scene, shut her window in my wife's face, and immediately got on her cell phone to call for backups. That's right. We must, as senior citizens, have represented an apparent risk. My thought afterwards was the officer, J.L. Fifi, badge number 44, thought we were kids having a good time, but our gray hair changed everything. No kids to bust that day. When she finally got off the phone 10 minutes later, another officer, J.M. Holmes, badge number 36, arrived, at which time I presented both officers a copy of the DMV regulations I always carry on the bike. They were printed in 1998, pertaining to Class A, B, and C limited-use vehicles. Both officers as much as said that I was being a wise guy because I had a copy of the regulations, and that they could not be valid because they were so old. Incidentally, the regulations have not changed in many years. It was then a third police vehicle pulled into the parking lot, this one driven by Sergeant Durant, badge number SGT-03. He gets to drive an SUV as noted in the pictures, and the scene must have looked like the crime of the century to the hundreds of passing motorists. Not too embarrassing for us. Needless to say, the sergeant has with him a book of all traffic regulations and crimes ever written, and they all hung out at the SUV while the sergeant read through the book looking for our particular crime. The other two officers watched the sergeant in his SUV read the book, and my wife and I watched the two officers watch the sergeant read the book for about 20 minutes, while my wife and I smiled at the onlookers, wondering what we have done to deserve all the police attention. I'd already called my local DMV on my cell phone and was told that my Class C moped required neither a helmet nor insurance and were only recommended. I had also called my attorney, who said this constituted false arrest. Now, you all think that you may only get one phone call, but that's not true, especially if the police are distracted by their responsive reading of the Book of Violations. Nothing would dissuade these officers from trying to find something to pin on us, because they dug themselves a hole and were reluctant to admit that we had done nothing wrong. The sergeant looked at the pedals on the moped a few times and asked, "How fast does that go?" If they could find a violation, then Officer Fifi's reason for stopping us in the first place could be justified. They were trying to exonerate her mistake on our time. By then, our groceries were ruined and my patience was running thin, as at least a half hour had passed and we were still under arrest. That's right, folks. You don't have to be behind bars to be arrested. In the eyes of the law, we were arrested and were being detained. That sounds like false arrest to me. Eventually, Sergeant Durant finished reading from the Book of Violations, ordered me to get up, and to approach his SUV. I'd been sitting on the pavement resting my knees because of a recent injury. With my wife's help, I managed to stand up and was informed by the sergeant that he could have my moped towed and could issue 2 tickets, one for not having proof of insurance and another for failure to present the proof of insurance I did not have. Rather than argue with him, I expressed my appreciation for his benevolence and were then free to go. No tickets, no towing, no incarceration. When I asked Sergeant Durant how he intended to tow my moped, he just walked away, but not until he looked at those pedals one last time. How disappointed they must have been. The next day I contacted Massena's mayor, Mr. Randy Deloche, who staunchly defended the actions of the police department but apologized on their behalf, as they had never experienced another moped violation in the long history of serious Massena crimes. The police chief, Mr. Currier, did apologize, but insisted we had not been arrested. Sergeant Durant still wanted me to be grateful for not having issued us 2 tickets, one for insurance and one for not presenting that certificate of insurance, but he had not yet found a resource stating that insurance wasn't a requirement, either then or now. He was ignorant of the fact that all the requirements for Class A, B, and C vehicles are contained in the New York State Driver's Manual, so I sent the department a copy of the regulations to help bring them up to date. Now, folks, just so you know, should you venture into the village of Massena, New York, beware. They can and will make your vacation a memorable one. The attached pictures show me and my wife on our pooch. As you can clearly see, we do appear quite menacing. Should you be contemplating a moped adventure into the village of Massena, or know someone who might be considering such an adventure, be sure to bring along a copy of the regulations. That would be pages 100 and 101 of the New York State Driver's Manual. It'd also be helpful to bring along your attorney with or without a helmet. It's your choice. As for me, I've discovered a way to get to Robert Moses State Park without ever having to go near the village of Massena, New York. This story is dedicated to Arlo Guthrie.